I don't think a family business means that it's all sunshine and lollipops kind of thing. I think you realise that as a family business, you kind of, through thick and thin, you are who you are. You've got to be there. So coming into the family business was actually quite confronting, and it's 17 years ago now, but you put your parents on a pedestal. You think that they can do no wrong, and it was actually quite confronting to actually realise that being in the business, there were things every now and again that he didn't nail them, or there were things, and that was kind of like confronting, but then afterwards going, well, of course, he's not perfect. You're not going to get everything 100% right. Funny enough, now that he's gone, he'd probably be able to pass comment more on that than I could, but I don't feel like anything's really changed. I feel like it's much the same.
Jay, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for having us.
It's always a pleasure, mate. So just for anyone that doesn't know, who or what is the JWH Group?
So we're a residential home builder. Started back in 2003. Family business, second generation now. So Dad started it, and now it's my sister and I. And we primarily service Western Australia across a number of areas with a few different housing brands.
And what's the biggest myth about leadership in a family-run business? Does that change the dynamic of the business, or it's what you know and what you do?
I think it's an interesting one. You realise coming into a family business that you really have to be into it. I think, like for my sister and I, over the years, we've come across a lot of family businesses, and you realise some are kind of in it but don't have their heart in it, and then others really do. And I think once you sort of figure that part out, and you really have to love it, because it is hard going. It's got its own challenges being a family business. So you do get put through your paces a fair bit. I think sometimes people look at it and go, oh, is it an easy run? And it's just like, no, there'd probably be other things that'd be a lot easier to do.
And so I guess on that note, you probably have to, you really need to believe in the initial vision. And, I know there's been, as you touched on, there's been some, people that have probably fallen into family-run business roles or pushed in, and you can smell it a mile away that you're just like, that's just not their bag. They're just, they're there because that's what they've had to do. And I remember my old man, and when I asked him about taking over the business, he was like, not a chance. I got pushed into working with my old man, and he's like, he said my old man was a prick. So I wouldn't want to do that to my son. And I was like, okay. So how do you balance being, one of the team while holding down the GM role? Is that, do you find yourself having to wear, I guess, a certain particularly different hats, or it sort of just all molds into one? And
yeah, I think we're lucky in that we grew up in the business. Or grew up around the business, and then we've both been in the business for around 17 years now. I think that was an interesting transition of people that you knew before, and then you kind of entered, and all of a sudden you're in like a different role, and like now like a management or a leadership type role. I think that authenticity part is quite key. People see us for who we are. They can see sometimes when we're having a good day or a bad day. They see our families, and I think that part can be quite funny at times when, like, I've had staff come to my house in the morning or something, and they've seen me making lunch for my kids with their lunch boxes or something, and they're like, oh yeah, you're not just at work, you have like a life outside of here. And it's like, yeah. So it's actually really cool when you can actually integrate those sorts of things, because I think it does add to the realness of who you are.
And I remember as a former employee of JWH, I remember going to one of the Christmas parties, and I forget how many employees there were in total, but one thing that stood out, and still to this day that I remember, was they had the 25-year club.
So the JWH club, which is 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35 years of service. And I think over a third of the 400 staff now are members of that. And it's, absolutely phenomenal, especially in this day and age. 10 years is, I think, harder to achieve now, but then surprisingly, the amount of people who, especially when they get inducted, whether it's 10 or 15 or whatever, go, that went really quick. That actually wasn't that hard. And it's kind of nice when they say it wasn't that hard. But I mean, for me, I said I'm 17 years in the group, and it's surreal how quick that went. because
Yeah.
I constantly go, I can't believe I've been in the group for 17 years. It just does not feel like that.
And some of them might their status at JWH in the group might be longer than their actual real marriage.
Yeah, yeah. And that's actually a cool part is that we've got a number of people who have met their partners at the group. We have a few people now where they've got sons or daughters working in the group. We've had like multiple generations in that. And it's actually pretty cool when you realize that they think it's a great enough place to work that they actually want they're good to have their family members work in the place as well. So that's probably something that does put a bit of a spring in your step when you go, okay, we must be doing something okay here.
Yeah, if anything, the past anything to go by, I remember the old man, the philosophy that I recall was work hard and play hard. And it was certainly some of the functions, if you will, that we had over at the headquarters at JWH were ones to remember, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely been some big, there's a lot of stories, good and bad and all that kind of thing. But I do think there's an element of you have to be able to have fun together. You know, people talk about like a family business and what does that mean? And I don't think a family business means that it's all sunshine and lollipops kind of thing. I think you realize that as a family business, you kind of through thick and thin, you are who you are. You've got to be there. So to me, I have been able to have some really hard, tough, difficult, heated conversations with people. But then 24, 48 hours later, you can be having a beer together on a Friday afternoon or a Thursday afternoon or something. And it's all good because you've gone through stuff together. And I think the more and more you have that, the longer you've had that, you realize that there are people you just want to go through things with. So you know that certain people, they do have their weaknesses or their deficiencies, but you also know like that is a weakness in that situation, but there's all these other situations where they have these strengths. So you really want to work with them through those. So yeah, it's that kind of thing.
Then what lessons from the old man have stuck with you over the years? Is there anything that springs to mind that?
That's probably that authenticity part. I think Dad's got a great ability to take things in and listen and try and see it from all sides, and also not be afraid to kind of challenge the person, whether he believes in that or not, just kind of go, well, what about this as an alternative? I find myself more and more over time, I've taken on a lot more of that, where you will be in certain situations and you are looking for those alternatives or you're stress testing it or whatever. And it can sometimes really frustrate people because they're like, I just want you to agree with me. And it's like, oh, no, it's not that I don't agree with you. I'm just trying to find the other angle
Stress testing the idea.
Yeah. So he's very good at that. And he's very calm in that he'll just listen. He kind of won't get mad. Like kind of stepping out of business, going to family, he was never one to kind of get mad. He would more just ask you the question of why. And then you'd sort of explain, and then in your own way, you'd kind of go, oh, yeah, what I did was not the right way or the best way to do it.
Bit of a Ray Dalio sort of approach to that. And what about the opposite? Is anything now that he's left the building that you've unwound and said, right, now he's gone, that we can finally get rid of this?
I think one thing I definitely kind of realised coming into the family business, which was actually quite confronting, and it's 17 years ago now, but it was that he's like, obviously, you've grown up with him and all that kind of thing. You have, I mean, like most people, you put your parents on a pedestal. You think that they can do no wrong or whatever like that. And it was actually quite confronting to actually realize that being in the business, there were things every now and again that Dad just didn't get right. He didn't nail them, or there were things, and that was kind of like confronting. But then afterwards going, well, of course, he's not perfect. So I actually find even with him now, not in the group as much, it's that thing of like not being too hard on yourself to kind of go, you're not going to get everything 100% right. You are going to every now and again. There are moments that I can share where I sit there and go, yeah, no, I don't think we nailed it there. Yeah, funny enough, now that he's gone, no, there's not really like lots of things that changed or anything like that. He'd probably be able to pass comment more on that than I could, but I don't feel like anything's really changed. I feel like it's much the same.
All right, so you've tried some bold building methods. Is there one that surprisingly worked for you that stands out, that's been a bit of a momentum shift in, obviously being a volume builder, and you would be all too aware that one slight tweak left or right can either make or break. Do you know what I mean? Like it's because it's such a volume game. It's like if you make one, it can be magnified.
Yeah,
like exponentially, rightly or wrongly.
it's a common conversation around like everyone's always looking for these different methods. We're in WA, double brick is so strong and all that kind of thing. And it is really good. It's still like a good building methodology, but it's just one building method. I have been able to like be around a group where we do a lot of framing. We've done a lot of like brick veneer and reverse brick veneer. We've mucked around with SIPs over the years, which is good fun. And I think like you try all your steel and timber framing, people are kind of almost looking for this real exciting, like, I don't know, let's build houses out of hemp. And that's all of a sudden we're just going to be building 1,000 hemp homes a year. And it's like, I haven't seen that. But what I have seen is like years ago now, like over 10 years ago, we were doing a lot of 2 stories, double brick, but we started doing a lot of soft tops where it's double brick on the ground floor, and on the upper floor we're doing framed. And it's nothing groundbreaking or like rocket science or anything like that, but it is just a really good way to build. And we still do a lot of that. And that is one that I think when we first started doing it, it kind of seemed a bit not very WA to do that. But all of a sudden, you've got a number of builders who do it now. And then we've got thousands of homes where we've built with that methodology. So that's probably a good one.
And is that, when you're just on that, is that because the lighter framework up the top is less on the structural engineering below, or?
You do get the bit of a benefit of saving some engineering costs. I think you also, it's not necessarily going to come down to like lots and lots of speed, but you do gain in some areas where laying bricks is hard work. It does take time. With framing, you can erect all the wall frames on an upper floor in 1 or 2 days. And then within a couple of weeks, you can have that clad and insulated and all that kind of thing, versus brick where you're also having to, it's just the manual labor component of it, like
Hoisting and
everything has to get lifted. So with framing, you can have all your frames delivered and craned up on, and then they can be erected by the guys. So it's one of those things where it does have its perks. I think that's the thing, is I think a lot of people, when they talk about different building methods, they're trying to get this silver bullet from us where like we'll go from taking 12 months to say 6 months. And those sorts of things are possible, but they come at a trade-off. It could
you've got to have half the house.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's like it's kind of playing around with those methods, but actually saying to people like, for all these methods, they've all got their pros and cons. So what's your trade-off?
We get asked all the time, cost savings, or this and that, and it's also, like you said, it's bang on. Like, it's what you give somewhere else, you take somewhere else, and it's like it's just like you either compromise on time, cost, or quality. And you can't have all 3 of them. Like, there's something it's got to give, but everyone wants that silver bullet that you talked about. And is modern methods of construction just overhyped jargon, or are we finally seeing methods that shift the needle? Like, is there anything out there that's really shifting the needle, or it's just like?
I think we're just seeing greater adoption of framing. It's not new. If anything, it's been around for a very long time, and WA's done a lot of framing over the years, but double brick has been very strong, and it still is. I do think you're seeing more and more people doing framing, and it's not if for anything that they sit there and kind of go, well, it does work. There's nothing wrong with it. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about it. We've had people who ring us up and say, oh, we're thinking about framing, but will we be able to get house insurance? And we're like, you should be able to. Yeah, well, why wouldn't you? And they go, because of termites. And we're like, oh, okay. I remember being in a display home, and a person just said, oh, we love the home, but we don't want to build it framed. I said, why not? And they said, well, we've got young kids. I'm worried my kid's going to run through the wall. And I was like, what are your kids doing? It's that kind of thing. So I think like that as a modern method, but then you are seeing other stuff, like you are seeing 3D printing coming in, which is quite cool. We haven't personally played around with it, but I've been watching that for a while, and that's quite cool. SIPS has been around.
Would that get any legs, do you think, in your opinion?
I think it will.
Is that the one where it runs the mud along? And
yeah. And if for anything, it's cool because it's hypnotic. But I think as a method, like I love all this stuff.
And is the brick robot dead?
The brick robot's not dead. It's still definitely around.
He'll be back now. He's getting $3.50 a brick.
Oh, I think it's got constraints though. It's kind of that thing you've been watching for a while, and you go, you'd love to see it succeed and have more of it out there. But like anything, it also has its limitations. When people say, oh yeah, you can run a robot 24 hours a day, it's like, yeah, but you're not allowed to build houses 24 hours a day. So that perk is actually not there. It's still got to work to the same hours as the rest of us when we're allowed to build. But it does have some perks. So I think it is definitely still going to feature. And I also think it lends itself well to a particular type of housing. Some types of housing, it's not going to be so good. So it comes back to those trade-offs and opportunities.
And it might, like, and as you said, it might suit somewhere down in the middle. I know you guys cover most of the state, but in an isolated area where you can't get brickies for love nor money. And we're getting some brickwork priced up at my house the other day, and he was like, "Well, we're getting $2.75 and $2.75 to $3 a brick."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Well, why that's happening? Framing is always going to be a great option or a great alternative."
Oh, and a part of the reason why they are is because there's not enough people who want to do it. And I mean, I started my career at Midland Brick, and we had to do like a bit of a half-day bricklaying course, and it was really cool that we got to do that. Yeah, like they were running all sort of staff through it at that point in time. And I remember doing it for like half a day, and it was cool to get to know, like, okay, we're selling bricks. This is part of what it's sort of all about. But by the end of the day, and I only did half a day, and I was like, okay, that's hard work. So I think, like, when people go, oh, do you think brickies are getting paid too much? It's like, no, I don't think they're getting paid too much. I think it's a hard yakka job and all that kind of so good on it. But I do think people have to be prepared that if there's not enough people who are going to do something, then you're going to have to pay for it.
Well, the brickie said to me he had a team of 10, and out of that 10, there's one other person still laying bricks. And he goes, the only reason I'm laying bricks now is because we're getting $3 a brick.
Yeah.
He said I just literally bought the retired brickies out of retirement to throw bricks around at $3 a brick. He said, but for 20 years, we'll $1 to $1.20.
Yeah, 100%.
For 20 years, he goes, we got that.
Yeah. And I think that's that changing tide. I mean, if you go back through history, there's been all sorts of weird and wonderful jobs that at certain points in time have earned great money or been paid well and all that kind of thing until they become, say, redundant or technology changes or whatever. I mean, once upon a time, there used to be people rolling sheet metal to make fenders for cars. That doesn't exist anymore. So you kind of see those trades change and all that kind of thing. And I think that's where, like, a lot of your off-site construction around wall framing and that is becoming more common because, in big factories and stuff, you've got the benefit of not being in the sun. You can automate certain things. You can run shift work.
Gantry cranes overhead.
Yeah.
All that sort of...
Yeah, lots of things you can do which bring a massive benefit.
Air conditioning.
Yep.
We'll just change gears a little bit into the sort of the mental health and mateship side of things. And I know this is probably a good topic for you. I know you've had a lot to do in that space as well. And not only that you do as an employer, you would employ a lot of trades, and typically without stereotypically trades, but most of them would be young males. And you've seen firsthand the impact of mental health struggles in construction. What finally pushed you to speak out about, the mental health? Is that because what you're exposed to with, seeing so many young people in that space, or?
Probably a multitude of factors. Part of what I studied, so after school I went to uni and I studied commerce, but the other thing I studied was behavioural science at Notre Dame. I did a minor in counselling, so I still find the human brain and people and behaviours fascinating, and I obviously encounter that a lot in my role. But then coming into the building industry, it is a predominantly male workforce. Obviously, I'm male. I've gone through different things in my career or my life so far, going through school, getting out of school and changing directions and stuff with mates and friendships and stuff, going, relationships. And then I've got kids, I've got young kids now, and going through all those different things, I guess you sort of encounter a lot. We've lost people to suicide, like friends and employees and that. And with all of that sort of stuff, it was sort of realizing that a lot of people probably aren't talking about it. I do hate the fact that even now they say, we need to be talking about it more. But if you see like an article in the news and someone's died or whatever, they won't actually say whether it was, say, suicide. But you can tell because at the bottom it says Lifeline. And it's just like, why are we kind of brushing this under the carpet when everyone can kind of figure it out? And I get the whole thing around copycats and all that sort of stuff, but it's still a space. And I think it's realizing some of the stuff that I've personally gone through that I'm happy to talk about. And it is like the struggles of like becoming a parent. It is, having your mates, but also having mates when they're not necessarily around because they're busy and going through struggles, being unsure about pressure and stuff with work, all that kind of thing. So to me, by talking about it a lot more, it kind of normalizes it a bit, and you sort of then seeing other people when you're talking to them about it going, oh, I feel the same way too. And like, cool. So you're not alone, neither am I. And yeah, and we're all going through it. Like no one is immune to any form of mental health.
Yeah, and I think like you said, like when you open those lines of communication up, and I've certainly been through some things in my time as well. And when you open up and open and show that vulnerability, the reception that you get back, depending on of course who you're talking to, but generally speaking, the reception that you get back is they can see that you're willing to be vulnerable, and that gives them the platform or the space, creates that space for them to then show their vulnerability or express what they're going through, because you've been brave enough and confident enough to be upfront and openly discuss, like it's not a taboo thing that gets pushed to one side.
Oh yeah, and I mean years ago I went back to my school and spoke to a number of the students and who were going in their final years of high school and everything. And I had to talk about my journey in school and then just after school. And the night before, I realized that a lot of what I'd sort of prepared was just crap, in that I was talking about, studying hard and all that kind of, which don't get me wrong, like, yeah, of course do that. But I was like, I don't need to be another person saying that. I'm going to talk about my own experience. So, when I spoke to the students, as I said, who put your hand up if you know what you're doing next year and all that kind of thing. And a whole bunch of hands shot up. And I was like, great. And I said, put your hand up if you've actually got no idea what you want to do. And like a bunch of hands shot up. And I said, okay, and put your hand up if you either do know or you don't know, but you're absolutely freaking out about whether that's going to be right or wrong, and what your parents think, what your friends think, blah blah blah. And pretty much all hands shot up. And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. I was exactly the same. And I had my, a couple of my best mates, 100%. I want to do this. I want to do this. And they all were very determined. Whereas I was sort of sitting going, oh, I got no idea, and I was freaking out. And it's all that kind of stuff, I think. And going back to that thing of like disarming people, I think sometimes it's just actually putting it out there and owning the feeling. Like it's okay to say sometimes, like, something just sucks. It's not easy having a full-time job or having a financial burden or being a parent or whatever. Like some of these things are just really tricky. It doesn't mean you're failing or as a person. It just means that some things are just tricky. And yeah, and I do enjoy talking to people about that. I probably dressed up with a fair bit of humor as well and take the piss out of myself, which is probably a very Australian thing to do. But it's, yeah, by talking about it more, it normalizes it. And I do, it's particularly in my industry, worry where you do actually have a lot of people who are sole operators. So they're on site a lot. They do have a lot of time to themselves where they're in quiet work. They're busy, it could be laying bricks or using nail guns and cutting timbers or whatever, but they've got a lot of time in their day. And it's really good. It's really powerful, but it's also really dangerous in a way, because your mind is so powerful. It can do a really good job of convincing you of something being good or bad. So if you've got too much time convincing yourself that life's not good, blah, 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 that's quite dangerous. So, yeah. And I think there's also, especially in a male-dominated industry, as men, we generally are programmed a fair bit from a young age to kind of suck things up a bit, don't sort of expose any kind of weakness or whatever. And it's like, there's no weakness in that. I would struggle to find a room full of men where you all put your hands up and go, how are you all, is anyone like struggling with anything at the moment? And it's just like anyone who says, nah, not at all, you'd be like, well, I call BS on that.
And it's like you say, it's when it's you get that opportunity to speak to people and give them an opportunity to open up, and where they wouldn't normally get that opportunity. Like you're not going to go to the old saying, how are you, mate? It's like, yeah, good, mate. But it's not like, oh, I'm feeling a bit depressed today, or down and out, and that's you don't get that opportunity to someone can open that space and create that space. But yeah, love what you said about unless you've got the AC/DC or Metallica fucking blaring through the headphones while you're doing anything else, that'd be unbelievable. But if you could set one simple challenge for blokes in the industry to look after their mates better, what would it be?
I mean, most people these days obviously have like an iPhone or a Samsung or something. And to me, one of the, as a feature is you can set yourself a reminder or a calendar appointment in your phone. And to me, the challenge to us would be like, set yourself a recurring appointment. And whether that is to actually go and do something or remind yourself to go and do something with a friend or a mate. So it can be just, going and watching the footy, or like going and watching something at the pub, or I don't know, it could be like hitting. It could be just like kicking a footy. I mean, I live across the road from a park, and I've sort of semi noticed there's these couple of guys who appear, I'd say every few weeks, and they seem to just rock up at the park with a six pack. They put it on the bench and then they kick a footy, and they kind of just kick the footy back and forth a bit, and then they have like a beer, and then they kick the footy a bit more, and they just kind of just chat. And I don't necessarily know the extent of what that is, but it kind of looks cool. Like I go, just to go and kick a footy around in a park and have a couple of beers and stuff like that. It's so incredibly simple. So to me, it's like if you can kind of set that appointment to just do something like that, I think that is actually very helpful and powerful, because it just increases the chances exponentially of something maybe coming up in that conversation where that person may just need a hand. And it's not even just like every time you catch up with someone, you got to go, oh, I'm just going to come and bleed out all my problems sort of thing. It's actually just, sometimes you just want to like talk to someone for a while about something that's completely unrelated. I've got mates that I catch up with where we just don't talk about work. We're all in very different professions. I like the fact that when we catch up, we don't talk about work. We'll talk about, certain things like with sport and everything. There's a lot of banter, just stuff around what's going on around the place in news or anything like with kids or partners related. But it's the fact that like it's just lovely to not talk about work for a couple of hours. And we just had like this Chinese restaurant that we go to, and next door is a bottle shop, and we just pick up a King Brown each, and then we go and order Chinese, and we just sit there and just talk about whatever for a while. And it's just such an awesome catch up. So to me, like that's the challenge. People like just actually be bothered to do that, because so many people talk about doing it but never do it.
And from my experience as well, I think as well, like like I said, you're a father, a partner, a husband, a mentor, a boss. You wear all these different hats, but if you lose the thing that drives you, whether that be your scuba diving or footy or whatever that is, that kicking the footy down the park, if you lose that side of that, what burns that fire inside, you can get stuck on that hamster wheel of that you're constantly giving. You're constantly giving for everyone else. You're at work, you're giving. You're in your relationship, you're giving. With your kids, you're always giving. And it's just like sometimes, from a male point of view, you can look at it and go, well, where's the time for me to reset? Where's the time for? And it's not a selfish thing to do, but it's sometimes just go, you know what? Like I need someone to vent to, or I just need someone just to take the hinges off and just to blow a bit of steam out. But really, because when you come back from that, of course you're going to be a better parent, you're going to be a better partner, because you've filled that cup. But if that cup's never getting filled, you just feel like everyone's taking out of your cup, but no one's topping that cup back up. And I think what you talked about, that mateship and that friendship and just those random catch ups where you can unhinge and get away from all the other hats you wear and talk about business and work all day. You can, as we call it, shoot the shit.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing.
Years ago, one of the guys that I decided to tee up like a men's social basketball, midweek basketball team. So we all got into that. And within a couple of months, we'd gone pretty deep into our bench. We'd all got injured. We'd done knees, broken fingers, just going for...
I relate.
Yeah, silly rebounds, all that. But what was funny, though, was that we had like a bit of a standing thing where like we go have the game, and then afterwards we'd have a beer in a car park afterwards outside the basketball centre.
Car park beers.
And it was just mint. And one day we sort of realised like we're all injured. We're all sort of battling a bit. And one of the guys who'd just been injured just goes, I don't know about you boys, but I just kind of got into this because I just wanted to, it was just a good way to know I was going to catch up with you boys every week. And we're like, and we couldn't find more people to fill our bench. So we ended up going, let's just keep meeting in the car park for beers. We kind of played out the season a bit haphazardly, but then continued to wear our basketball uniform and just go straight to the car park with a couple. And people would be like seeing us on their way in, going, "Oh, do you boys win tonight?" We're like, "Yeah, had a great game." And we had
basketball was the winner today.
Yeah, and like my wife would literally be like, "Why don't you just have them around here or like to our house, or why don't you just go meet them at the pub?" I was like, "It's not the same."
Yeah.
There's something fun about call it tailgating or whatever, where you could just hang out. And I think it's all that kind of stuff. Sometimes it doesn't need to make sense. Sometimes a driving range is just really good fun. No one's keeping score or anything, but sometimes it's just fun to whack balls at something.
Only the idiot that's winning.
Yeah.
Takes the score.
Yeah. And I think that's like, I enjoy all that kind of thing. And I don't think it's just a male thing. I think as a broad comment, I do think women are a lot better at it than what men are. And I do think that's probably something that's a bit of a traditional colloquial type stereotype where we still feel like a breadwinner, family first, like make sure everything else is fine before we kind of then, like as you said before, fill our cup. But the inverse of that is, it's kind of like there's a reason why on a plane you put your own oxygen mask on first. Like you are no good to your kids or your partner or whatever if you're not good in yourself. And that's either looking after yourself or it's like going, okay, well, I'm good, but I've got to make sure I can help my mate put his oxygen mask on too. And that's probably the part that I guess I enjoy that, and I enjoy talking about it, and I enjoy seeing. And we run a construction conference internally, and a couple of years back, I sort of set that same target to all the guys in the room and said, because we talked about mates in construction and all that kind of thing, and said, if you can do anything today after this conference, can you book in with someone to do something, whether it's going for a run or, it could be hit a tennis, could be just shooting at the basketball ring or just grab a meal or whatever. Just do that in the next 30 days. That's all I'd actually ask you to do. And within a couple of months, I actually had a few guys in our group message me back and say, hey, I actually did that and caught up with someone and it was actually really good and going to do it again and all that kind of thing. And it was always like, okay, that's cool. It's not hard. It feels like quite high impact. It's relatively low effort. It's just actually getting off your ass and doing it. So I think all that sort of stuff is actually really important. And then I also think as well in an industry where we are typically getting a lot of younger people coming through in trades and apprenticeships and all that kind of thing. They're also at the beginning of career stuff, probably buying their first place or, experiencing financial burden with a house or a rental or whatever. Chances are going to be getting married. Chances are going to be having kids.
Now that's a financial burden, right there, those two,
Yeah.
marriage and kids.
It's all that big stuff. So you kind of go and you're spending a lot of time at work with people. So that's probably the best place to maybe have some of those conversations.
I had a guy ring me yesterday, which we normally swim together. Hadn't spoken to him for the best part of 8 or 9 months, and straight into it, probably a 20 or 30-minute conversation, which could have gone a lot longer. And what we spoke about, and I'm not sure how it sort of got to that, but I think it was, and I won't share what it was, but it was. I feel that I opened that space up for him. He dabbled in it, and then I shared my experience with what me and my wife were going through, and straight off the bat, he was like, "That's exactly where we're at. This is exactly what we're going through."
Yeah.
And I was able to share with him what we'd done to alter that direction that we were going in. And, what worked for us. I said, it may not work for you, but this is what worked really well for us. And having, him hear that honesty and that vulnerability sort of just went, he was like, and then you just saw that, you just leave that door slightly wedged open and off he went, and he was just sort of, it felt like the first time, which, some people call it taking an emotional breath.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, you can ask someone and what else and what else and then what happened.
Yeah.
Just let them sort of, bleed it out or just, take that emotional breath to go, fine, I can actually release it and talk about it or share it. And whereas previously they probably felt that there's no real given space to be able to, well, where do you go? You don't go to the bartender and say, I'll have a pint of problems or, this is what I'm going through. You know what I mean?
Well, someone's thing as well, it's not just about, one thing I think my wife and I think we do quite well at times is when one of us is sharing things, that will say, so are you looking for solutions or do you just need me to listen right now? And I think it can be the same in friendships and mateships and that, where it can just be like, so you just listen to the person going, oh, okay. And you don't necessarily have to say, oh, I've been through that too. It could be, oh, no, I've done that and that's what we did. But it can also just be like, that sounds like that'll be really hard. That sounds like it sucks. Or I'm just going to sit here and listen and I don't have to provide you with any sort. And other times it could be, but I do think like that frame of mind is actually, because sometimes people just need to let something off. And I know like a lot of people have their partners and everything, and people say, oh, I share everything with my partner. And so, and that's great. And it is actually really important to do that. But I also think sometimes and it's not like you need to go and talk about your partner to a mate. Sometimes you just want to talk to your mate about something that you have maybe also spoken to your partner about, but it's just a different perspective. It could be someone who's just wired in a little bit similar. And I think that like emotional breath part thing, the way you phrase that is really cool. Like that to me, sometimes is what people just need, that moment of just having a breather.
Whenever me have an argument with my wife, she always comes back and says, "I've asked all my friends, they agree," and I'm like, "Okay."
Well, I've asked all my
Yeah,
friends.
they all agree with me.
Yeah,
But it's that there's that. But like you said, that's there when you're in that space, and sometimes you just have to listen and not provide the solution. I don't have to have all the answers. It can just be they're just like I forget what it was. I was watching a TV show or something. It's just like, I don't need any responses. I just need you to listen.
yeah,
And I'm like, yep, rightio. And because sometimes you can dive in. And one thing I never try and say you should do this or you should do that. You need to do this. I always try where I can and frame it with that must be difficult what you're going through. I've experienced something similar, and what worked for me was but not saying, oh, you need to go and do this, or you need to go and do that, or you should try this, or you should try that, and push them down that road. It's just like, well, yeah, let's open those lines of communication and let someone vent or take the emotional breath as we put it.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, that brings us to the end of the show. Thanks for joining us on the show, Jay. Smoking Joe and the basketball team and the car park beers.
Yeah, no, and thanks for having us. It's it's cool to take a moment and have a conversation like this.
Yeah, no, thank you. And it's we understand that you're a busy man running the group at the moment, so it's thanks for taking the time out of your day to come and chew the fat and share your experiences with us in the business world.
No worries at all.
Thanks, mate.
Cool. Thank you.